So I first want to thank you for joining us here at BlockShow.
Great being here today. It's really a great event, so I'm
you.
honored to be part of it.
Well, I'm honored to have you sitting across from me with the many debates that I've seen you go across the table with a lot of folks. But I'm more interested in knowing right now, you've been looked at as one of the top 100 global thinkers. How does that feel? Do you feel a sense of responsibility with that, or a sense of achievement?
Well, you know, it's flattering to be considered a global thinker, and I started first as an academic, then I did policy work for the US government for several years, ran a business and economic consultancy, so I've always been an academic and intellectual. So I think about all the economic, financial, and even political questions are at times, and I try to make sense of it. So I spent little of my lifetime traveling around the world and understanding this very complicated world. So it's flattering to be considered as one of the thinkers that people want to listen to.
Whether you're pro-crypto or not, it's actually a big honor, no matter what, to be inside that world. So I'm glad that you think of it. These predictions that you have, this analysis, how do you go about that? Like, how is this an innate? Do you feel that you just know, you have a feel? What's your analysis, your process like?
Well, you know, I've been studying the global economy and financial markets for 30, 40 years. And the combination of having, first of an academic experience, writing dozens of academic papers, theoretical, empirical. Secondly, having the policy experience of spending several years in Washington and getting to know every senior policymaker in the world, and then following financial market and understanding how they work. So it's both rigorous academic analysis and models, but also a lot of following the global economy day in, day out, and trying to connect the dots and make sense of it. And I got an expertise on financial crises, asset bubbles, credit bubbles, and why they go bust. You know, financial crises are not black swan events that occur randomly. It's not like an earthquake or a tornado that you cannot predict. It's more like a build-up of financial vulnerabilities, policy mistakes, and other vulnerabilities of the economic and financial system that reach a tipping point. So financial crises, to some degree, can be predicted, and bubbles can be analyzed. It's not just a random guess.
That's how you, and so for the 2008 crisis, what led you, what analysis, you went through a lot of, what key analysis in you predicting that 2008 crisis?
Well, you know, before the 2008 crisis, I'd spent literally 10, 15 years first studying other financial crises. I was an expert of the Asian and the emerging market financial crisis. Then I worked in policy, trying to understand how you figure out these crises and resolving them. And then I had a sophisticated understanding also of market reaction. So it was a combination of all these things that led me to see not just the housing bubble, not just the subprime bubble, but how this is going to become a global financial crisis rather than a housing boom and bust. So it was really a combination of things that together led me to make that assessment.
Right. And so what are you looking at for the immediate future of the global economy? What should we look out for now?
Well, this year and next year, the global economy is going to do reasonably well because we have an undesirable and unsustainable fiscal stimulus in the US, but that stimulus is going to lead to growth being above potential, at 3% rather than 2%. I worry that by 2020 we could have a stall of economic growth, if not recession, because of a combination of factors. The fiscal stimulus becomes a fiscal drag. Secondly, the Fed is going to raise rates from 2% towards 3.5%. 3, we're going to have the beginning of trade wars that are going to create economic friction. 4, asset markets are going to correct, seeing that. And finally, oil and commodity prices are going to be higher given supply constraints, and that's going to be a dampening on economic activity. We also live in a world in which there is a populist backlash against trade, against migration, against globalization, against supranational activity. And these political risks are becoming things that the markets are going to become sensitive to. So this year and next year look okay, but by 2020 I think the risk is of an economic slowdown, if not a global contraction.
What about, without getting too political with the current administration, how do you feel that the current leadership is approaching the Fed right now in the past 24 to 48 hours, how they're battling back with the Fed?
Well, one of the lessons of the last decades is that central banks have to be independent, and when they're not independent, like in the case of, say, Venezuela, where you have now hyperinflation, but also cases like Turkey today, where the president is attacking the central bank and telling them don't raise interest rate, then currencies tend to collapse, and then you have rising inflation and you have financial instability. So I think that one of the risks we're facing today is that even today, when growth in the second quarter was 4% and unemployment rate is below 4%, the president is starting to attack the Fed. He's saying the raising interest rate is not justified. It's justified because policy rates are still below inflation. So real rates are actually negative. So if Trump is attacking the Fed today when the economy is still booming, what's going to happen in 2020 where you have another election and he has to run again for the presidency, and most likely economic growth is going to slow down towards 1%, if not less, because of monetary fiscal factors, trade, and other types of friction. I worry about politicizing what the central bank does, and the experience of other emerging markets suggests if you politicize the Fed and you try to interfere with it, there are negative economic and financial consequences. He's playing with fire, trying to attack the Fed as he's doing right now.
What would you advise him to do?
The best thing you can do is to tell, like every other president, the Fed is independent, the Fed is a dual mandate. You want to, on one sense, maintain price stability, inflation close to 2%, and maximum economic growth that is sustainable and maximum employment, and let the Fed that is independent decides. Most of the time they do the right thing. Interfering with the Fed is going to have financial and economic impact that are going to be negative. So better just to shut up and not interfere with the Fed. That's the best advice I can give to any government, any president, any administration in any country.
Okay, throw one this at you. Have you ever considered developing your own cryptocurrency? And if you did, what would it have to contain?
Well, first of all, I have not done so, and my speeches and my arguments are all on why cryptocurrencies are a bubble has gone bust. And by the way, I think one important thing in this debate is that I don't have any financial position and financial interest. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin can go to the moon and be worth $1 million, or can go to zero. I don't have a long position, I don't have a short position in Bitcoin, in any other cryptocurrency, in any blockchain or related asset. So what I'm saying is based on my best analytical academic assessment of this particular industry. I'm not going to make a penny whether it's going to the moon or going to zero. I'm just having my reputation at stake. And when I speak about this particular space, I'm not talking my book. Pretty much everybody else in this market, in this business, are talking their book and trying to boost their own currency or their own business. I have zero financial interest in this space, and therefore I don't want to have a cryptocurrency, I don't want to invest in cryptocurrency, I don't want to short them, I don't want to go long into them. I want to be neutral because I'm independent, and whenever I speak about the topic, I have no financial interest in it.
So you feel strong about that?
Yeah. I believe in intellectual and academic honesty, independence, and lack of any formal conflict of interest. I have zero conflict of interest. I'm speaking my mind.
With all of the education, with all of the experience you have, what's going to happen in the cryptocurrency market that will not happen in the traditional market?
To me, the cryptocurrency market is the mother or father of all the financial bubbles. Bitcoin went from 1,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 to 20,000 last year, but in the last 9 months has lost already 70% of its value. It's gone from 20,000 to 6, and that's the best of all other cryptocurrency, because the other typical cryptocurrency lost more than 90% of its value. So that's an example of a bubble that's gone bust. This is a space where there is a lot of vaporware, a lot of scams, a lot of manipulation, a lot of conflicted interests, a lot of stuff that is shady. And this bubble was a big bubble, has gone bust. So there is a revolution in financial services. It's fintech. It's revolutionizing payment system, credit allocation, insurance, capital markets, asset management. Is based on AI, big data, Internet of Things. Is not based on blockchain, is not based on cryptocurrency. Yes. The revolution in financial services has zero to do with crypto, has zero to do with blockchain.
And you see zero application for that happening now and or in the future, really holding its weight, really grabbing a piece of it.
No
it's just not going to happen.
There is no killer app. 75% of all the apps are what? CryptoKitties,
yeah, there's more
Ponzi
entertainment.
schemes,
Exactly.
and casino games like in Vegas. And 25% of it is decentralized exchange that nobody's using.
So you
there
don't
is
think
no crypto?
no country
killer
outside
app.
the U.S., no one will succeed in the blockchain, crypto, fintech space.
I think it's the most overhyped technology in human history, blockchain,
Wow.
frankly.
Wow. More overhyped than the internet in the beginning.
Much more, because the internet, there was something real.
Ah,
There was a hype
we
in the
only knew
internet.
that afterwards.
Huh?
We only knew that afterwards. We only knew it was actually real when we started using
No,
after
because
the moment.
whenever the internet started, I was among when a first adopter, millions of people started to use email, millions of people started to use the web, millions of people created websites, and there were goods and services and real businesses.
You don't think
10
there's
years
goods and
into this
services
space,
Yeah.
the only thing we have is Bitcoin and CryptoKitties and Ponzi schemes. There is no killer app, and there's not going to be any killer app.
You know what? I have to tell you that we're going to end it right on that note, and we will take your words, and I hope I see you in the World Economic Forum shortly. And we'll continue this conversation, and we'll see if anyone stood out above and beyond where you think that no one will succeed. I cannot
We'll
thank
see.
you enough,
I'm
Nouriel.
open-minded,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
I'm skeptical.
But
Good
and a
being
good
here.
one at that. Nouriel, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Good talking.
Yes.